Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Shantay Duffy. Shantay is, I think, our third guest who is a repeat guest. So this is pretty special. How are you doing, Shantay?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is exciting. I'm really excited to have you back. So I think you were one of the first 10 episodes. You were on one of the first 10 episodes we had, probably episode 6, something like that. Um,
Yep.
and we got pretty specific about your backstory, and we'll jump into that a little bit here today. I know today we want to focus a little bit more on the challenges that come along with being a single mom and starting a company. Because that is,
Absolutely.
man, I just got stressed just saying those two things out loud. But for the listener who's unfamiliar with you, tell us who you are today. What are you up to today?
I'm Shante Duffy. I am the director of operations and one of the co-founders of BiFi Loan Servicing, also known as my second child, if you ask my friends and family.
Nice. And obviously, for those who don't know, Shante and I work together, so we have a lot of interaction on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
So this will be a fun conversation. Um, let's do a kind of a high-level, quick overview of the first episode, if you would. You're not going to cover everything from that episode, obviously, but kind of hit some of the highlights and lowlights as far as your backstory goes.
Backstory, I was adopted. I was in foster care for the first 3 years of my life. I was adopted, ironically, into a white family. And I say that because people don't know, and there's just a lot of history with that alone. I was adopted. I was very, very blessed, and I have to bounce back and forth. Raised with, I'm one of 5 kids, so it's great, by a single parent as well, who also owns her own business and has for longer than I've been alive. So, I have definitely really good role model there within my mom and just a supportive family after that. And then, went through school as a child, got out of high school, started going to college, and found out that I was pregnant with my son. His name is Benjamin, and I love him to death. He is now 12 years old. And, you give birth to a child. And I remember saying this on the first time, you give birth to a child, happy, healthy baby, 10 fingers, 10 toes, you're good to go. You get sent home, and now you're on your own to raise this child. Definitely fun and interesting and challenging all at the same time. But as Benjamin grew up and started to get older, around 2, 3 years old, I was a little concerned as I was comparing him to my sister's child, actually, who's only 3 months older than him, and realized that he was definitely a little different. Wasn't really sure what was going on, and took the route of finding out.
Hmm.
And found out that my son ended up being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and had to navigate his life that way, to make sure I meet his needs so he could be successful in life, as well as adjusting myself and learning, because that's not something I've ever actually had to deal with, and manage in my face. So it was
Yeah.
definitely a lot of hurdles. He has moved mountains, and I'm very, very proud of him. It's still
Hmm.
a challenge. As 12 years old, we're not far off from some puberty years and
Hmm.
lots of attitude, but he is also a mini me, so it makes sense. So yeah, that was a lot of
Yeah.
it. And I stayed at home for a year to raise him the first year, and realized
Hmm.
that I am not cut out to be a stay-at-home mom.
Hmm.
I will always give my flowers to stay-at-home moms because it's hard work. It's I do think it's sometimes harder than having a regular 9 to 5
Sure.
job. And also trying to just maintain a home. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
a whole lot.
decided to start working after he turned 1.
Yeah, got it. There's some that I can relate to there that, with my son as well. And just having a special needs child is not it's not easy in and of itself. That's a huge challenge. And so yeah, obviously I can't relate to being a single mom, or I also was not adopted. So those are some real challenges you've been through for sure. So it sounds like though you weren't that just wasn't enough in the way of challenges, so you decided to s- start a start a loan servicing company. Before we get to
Essentially.
that, how did you find your way into loan servicing? How did that happen on the professional side?
I always feel funny answering this question because most people kind of have an idea of what their career is going to be, and I had no idea. I just knew I wasn't staying home. Honestly, I found a servicing company. I was looking for a job, and I just wanted something, an office structure, a regular 9 to 5. I wanted to be home nights and weekends and holidays with my son. And I found a loan servicing company that was within 3 miles of my home.
Mm,
And
nice.
I started as an admin assistant. I knew nothing. about this industry as a whole. I was very like, just pay your mortgage to
Hmm.
your bank or you lose your home.
Well, let's
Um,
talk about
s-
that briefly because, similarly, I ended up working at a title company and I knew nothing about that. I had no clue what a title company was at that time. But, these are things you don't learn in school typically, right?
Correct.
You know, about mortgage processing and mortgage servicing, title insurance, things that are pretty important actually in real life. But define for the listener, what is a loan servicer? What does a mortgage loan servicing company, what does that company do?
A mortgage loan servicing company is a company that private lenders and investors need to use to track and maintain borrower payment histories for their mortgage payments. So essentially, we are the companies that when a borrower makes their mortgage payment to us, we process it through our system, make sure everything's applied correctly for the loan terms, and then we kind of redisperse those funds back to the lender. We're essentially that middleman to make sure that everything's coming in and going out properly. We're following compliance and making sure that we're handling the collection of these mortgage payments for the clients, which are our lenders and investors. So
Yeah.
pretty straightforward, just on the easy
Yeah.
side.
No, and sometimes I'll equate it somewhat like a property management company for a rental
Yep.
property. I think there are a good number of more hurdles from a compliance standpoint, like you referred to. Licensing is very state based. When it comes to loan servicing, there's a lot of red tape and things like that as compared to a property management company. Those can be fairly easy to at least get started. There's not usually a lot of red tape with a property management company, but it's a very similar concept at a high level, is that you're collecting payments from, in this case, a lender. As a property manager, you're collecting payments from a tenant, and then you're dispersing those funds to, I'm sorry, collecting money
We're
from a
collecting
borrower,
to a borrower.
dispersing
Yes.
funds to a lender. I'm glad I just listened to my own voice. And then in on the property management side, you're collecting tenants' money, rent payment, and sending
Hmm.
that to the landlord. So very similar role. Um, so you didn't know what a loan servicer was. You found
Nope.
a job ad basically that was for a company within 3 miles of your home because you were prioritizing being a mother and a good mother and being around for your son.
Yep.
Um, okay, so walk us through just briefly your career in your first say 8 or 9 years in the loan servicing space.
My first 8 years in a loan servicing space, I climbed the ladder a lot. I learned from the ground up. I learned, boots on the ground. I was watching, I was listening. I like to learn, I like to gain knowledge, but I also like to share it. So that's a natural trait within me. So I started and didn't know anything. I was answering phones, scanning paperwork, and realizing like I'm answering phones. I can't answer these questions because I don't know what they're talking about. So I was really, really fortunate to have an amazing mentor over those 8 years who I still talk to this day. Recently saw a couple months ago from there. And I just started to ask questions. And that's really kind of how I climbed the ladder. And it was, well, why does this happen? How does this work? And it was a lot of research and a lot of networking that I started to do because I used to get jealous that he'd go to conferences.
Mhm.
He always would tell me about the fun things that he did there, and I'm like, "Well, can I go?" And it was just I was 21 years old. Can I go? And
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, why not? And I'll never forget the first conference that I actually traveled out of state for. I went out to Texas, and it was awesome.
nice.
And it was I didn't realize how big but small this space was.
And
So I
you're
got
you're
to
in New
meet.
Jersey, right?
Yes, I am in New
So
Jersey, so me
yeah,
jumping on an
Texas is a
airplane
little different than New Jersey.
a little bit, but they're super cool. And to be in an area where there's so many more people that are aware of this space and also who aren't, it really opened my eyes. And I was like, wait, this is actually really cool. And I just kept going. And I watched myself go from an admin assistant to an office manager to the business development manager and,
Hmm.
helped hiring and creating procedures and processes. And I
Hmm.
just grew to love it somehow
Yeah,
kind of made myself a big enough face in the world just
yeah.
as a servicer and trying to help investors with their needs.
Well, I think that's a really couple of key points. I mean, one is just you do have to roll up your sleeves and kind of learn things yourself in life. I would say that's a really good lesson. Is a lot of people I think kind of expect to be spoon fed in a sense of, well, I've worked with people at some former roles where they'll say, well, I wasn't trained on that, so I can't do that. It's like, that works to an extent, but at some point it's like you got to figure some things out and you have to be proactive.
Yep,
And sounds like that's how you were able to rise through the ranks. And I know for sure you definitely made a name for yourself. I mean, a lot of
somehow.
people, I think it's just a matter of adding value and listening to other people and just being proactive about, like you said, acquiring knowledge, but then sharing it. Don't,
Yes.
not hoarding that knowledge. So that's really it's really good. So I know that company ended up moving out of state,
They
and
left me.
yeah, they left
Um,
you. So yeah,
I
talk
did
about
have
the
the
that.
opportunity to move. I want to make that
Mhm.
abundantly clear. I just could my life is here in
Yeah,
New Jersey. So
yeah.
they moved to Nevada and got themselves set up. I stayed and kind of ran the Jersey office, and then we walked into COVID,
Mm,
which kind of changed the dynamic of the entire world.
sure.
We luckily, though, in the servicing world, still got to work. We were, in my eyes, essential.
Hmm.
So I still worked. The COVID didn't really affect me too much in my career, and just with realizing that a lot of people didn't want to keep working, kind of stayed home, whether they decide to stop working, go get a new job, whatever the case may be. And it got to a point where we kind of shut down the Jersey office. We didn't need it. And I went
Hmm.
remote. And then I kind of walked into an opportunity that I tried to say no to for a while. I definitely pushed that off for months.
Yeah.
And then realized that, when when opportunities present themselves, they present themselves for a reason.
Hmm.
And you're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to be uncomfortable.
Sure.
But I've always wanted to be a part of something big, always.
Hmm.
And I kind of sat back and was like, I have the opportunity to create something here that I
Hmm.
am passionate about and that I genuinely love, stress and all. And I was like, I have to do this. Like, how many people get this opportunity in this corner of our world?
Sure.
Being in servicing and note investing and things like that. And I decided to take the plunge.
Nice. Um, so from a personal standpoint, through COVID, and then we'll get to the starting the
Hmm.
company. Um, how did you manage, being a single mom through all and working at the same time? I mean, I can tell you that at that time, actually, my wife was working for my company. She was working for me,
Hmm.
which is a whole probably 10 episodes we could do. Um, and once my kids were essentially doing school from home, she pretty much had to stay, and become my son's aide or teacher. So she kind of threw me to the
Yeah.
side and focused on him, which made sense. But how were you able to navigate that?
So I'm fortunate enough to have family where almost everybody in my family wasn't working. And I was the one that still had to. So it was very easy to have Benjamin watched and have him do homeschooling. So the toughest part was the end, like 2020 from March through June.
Hmm.
But as we all know, COVID still went on.
Hmm.
Because he has special needs. In New
Hmm.
Jersey, special needs kids were the ones that, a lot of us, we were concerned that they were going to be affected the most. All kids end up
Hmm.
being affected in some stance, but he was
Sure.
able to go to school. So when the new school
Got
year
it.
started, as everyone else is still home, all the special needs kids got to go to school.
I see.
It's smaller groups. So as September of 2020 rolled around, he went
Yeah.
to school every day. We went back to regular routine.
Got it.
We were very fortunate to not get sick,
Yeah.
but I did miss out on time. There was points where I was waving at my child through a window because I was going into an office where other people still were there, and
Hmm.
I would not be able to live with myself if I contracted COVID and passed it along to him. So
Sure.
I would buy he's obsessed with Legos and Super Mario.
Mm.
So I would buy little things. I bought him a drone. So he'd fly these drones around and just stuff to keep him occupied. But it was probably the saddest moment of life because you never
Sure.
picture not being able to just hug your kid.
Sure.
And feed him dinner. There's things that I take for granted or I think sometimes are stressful on a daily basis aren't. And I miss out on that, but I also look at COVID as a blessing because I also ended a serious relationship.
Mm.
All this is happening at the same time. So
Hmm.
to me, it was like this is my chance for a reset and to clean
Hmm.
up and really figure out what I want out of
Sure.
just life moving forward.
That's really important is just the perspective, because I mean that comes up on this show quite a bit is we don't seek out bad things to happen to us.
No,
Nobody really wants to go through adversity, right? It's not fun, but there's always a bright side and always something that comes out of that that's either an opportunity or growth, like you talked about, or ending something bad in your life, and moving on. So, all right. So BiFi loan servicing. This opportunity gets presented to you, from a guy named Chris.
Yes.
And talk about, like, what was the impetus? And obviously, I have some inside information on this as well, but I'll pretend for now I don't. So, what's the reason? Why start a servicing company? Why call it BiFi? What's going on into your mind at that time?
There were several different reasons. So in the opportunity of like, hey, Shantay, why don't you start your own? It was a mix of, my prior employment moving and then me working.
Hmm.
I don't like working from home at all.
Hmm.
I'm an
Yeah.
office girl all day long. But it was that, and then it was okay. I kept saying no, 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 no. It's too hard. It's too expensive. I can't do it. And lovely Chris, who we love to death, he wouldn't take no as an answer. And
Yeah.
I should
Sounds
have
like
known that
Chris.
because I know him very well. But
Yeah.
I trusted him, and I trust you. So I sat down and was like, okay, Shante, here's an opportunity. You want it because it gives you a chance to chase your entrepreneurial goals and
Hmm.
dreams that I've always had.
Yeah.
And someone's literally willing to support and help. You have people that are going to, do this with you. It's not you solo at all. And I think that was a big part of my fear.
Hmm.
And I sat down and really thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to be different. I don't want to just be like every other servicer. I don't,
Hmm.
Servicers don't get a good rap in our space. Nobody, I say
Yeah.
this to everybody. I've probably said on every podcast I've ever been on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants us, nobody likes a servicer, but you need one.
Yeah, exactly.
I
I
don't
kind of
want
I
to
kind of
just
equate it
be,
to like a referee and I've talked about
yes,
this before, but like in a say a basketball game or basketball referee. No one goes to the game to watch the ref. They're
nope,
not excited about the referee, right? But
but they
you
have to be
absolutely
there.
need a ref to
Yep.
keep everyone compliant and to, keep score, right? And so
Call the shots.
exactly. So it's a
And
vital role for sure.
absolutely. And I just wanted to somehow bridge the gap. I wanted to be needed and wanted, as a whole. And I've worked with many, many, many different investors over the years. And it was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we have to do this right. And it took
Hmm.
a lot of brainstorming and it was definitely challenging. It was fun. It was exciting.
Yeah.
The beginning parts are super fun. But sitting down and getting a group of investors that I trust to be honest and vocal and blunt and bold in the things that
Yeah.
they look for in their servicers, I think was my favorite part to this day of setting up,
Yeah.
BiFi. And it was getting feedback. What do you like about servicers? What do you don't like? Why do you pick this one over this one in certain scenarios? Is it just a licensing scenario or is it they just handle certain things better? And we basically kind of pulled all that information in and was like, okay, so how do we address all these pain points? Because if
Right.
we can address these, like we're already ahead of the game.
Yep.
And that's how I thought, we could bridge that gap. So that
Sure.
was the most fun part of
Yeah.
it. And it got to a point where I was like, I think I can do this. And at that point it was like, all right. And I struggled, I'm not gonna lie. I struggled with departing from
Yeah.
the place I learned. My mentor, they were family. They weren't
Yeah.
just bosses and people I worked with. They were family to me. And that's 8, almost 9 years of my life
Yeah.
that I was walking away from, and I felt so odd.
Mm.
I felt
Yeah.
like I was doing something wrong, but they also understood it. So
Sure.
when it, was explained, Shante, you're going to do great. You're going to be fine. There was no love lost because then the flip side to it, I'm technically about to be a competitor of yours. And that
True.
made me really anxious because they're family. So
Yeah.
I still
Absolutely.
feel like it was a good move and it was the right move for me. And it
Yeah.
opened up my eyes and my mind and the opportunity. And I learned a lot. And I'm still learning a lot to
Yeah.
this day.
Well, that's where I'd say, I mean, for one, we have a good working relationship with that company still, and I know
Yep.
you send loans to them sometimes. So there's no love lost, or there's a good relationship, I should
Yes.
say. Um, but the other thing is, framing it as even if versus what if. And this is something that I end up saying a lot on the show. And you and I have talked about this
Yep.
before as well. But let's say you left that company, and even if BiFi was a disaster, let's just say it failed.
Hmm.
Well, even if that happened, I guarantee you could find another job in this space,
Oh,
whether it's
yeah.
with that old company, former company, or a different company, right? So
Correct.
you got to be willing to take some calculated risks in life, and I love that you were able to get yourself to that point where you were comfortable enough comfortable with being uncomfortable.
exactly. I was
Uh,
just about to say that you had to be uncomfortable but comfortable with it. So,
yeah,
and
and so there's no, one size fits all in how to kind of approach that.
yeah,
So and absolutely, I mean that is one thing. Obviously, I was involved in that from the beginning, as far as developing all the plans and everything. A large part of 2021, that's all we were doing
that's
was
all we did.
we weren't running and we weren't operating for the most of that year. We were getting
Setting up
licenses, setting up, planning, creating SOPs, figuring out what should work, what won't work, et cetera. So a lot of work went into that, from December, January, almost for that first
for about a
year.
year. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we didn't
Um,
open our doors till November to
yeah,
sell,
exactly.
service for other investors.
And I mean, Chris and I are still active fund managers. So the whole BiFi, buy investors, yes, we did take a lot of input from other investors, um, but it was actually created by active investors. And I know
Yep.
you have been an active note investor as well.
I
So
finally jumped over that bridge too. So yeah.
yeah, so I mean that's a key point as well. It's not just for investors, which is critical, but it was actually created by investors because we understood the pain points of using other servicers. There's no perfect servicer, let's be honest, right?
Nope.
But I still use other servicers myself, and
So have I.
so yeah. So I mean, I think that research component and that work is critical up front. What would you say, looking at that first year specifically? Maybe one or two lessons learned or takeaways from that first year.
I know you and I talk about this all the time, but for everybody listening, we definitely bit off more than we could chew. And I hate admitting it, but it is the lesson that was learned.
It's
I
true.
think we were all so eager and so excited and watching it come to fruition. I think we all were like, this is happening, this is happening. And I was excited, you were excited, everyone was
Yeah.
excited. And
Yeah.
then we just kind of went like head first in like a no
Yeah.
diving situation. We
Right.
obtained a lot of licenses out of the gate without really, we
Yeah.
wanted to be open to a lot more investors to be able to use this, but didn't really process
Yeah.
how that was going to happen. So I
Yeah.
think we skipped a step. And I think it's just
Yeah.
our eager that kind of got into it. And we definitely
Yep.
felt that the end of
For sure.
21 and
No,
then
I would
going into
agree.
22.
I mean, and it's one of those things where, again, there's no playbook on how
Hmm.
this should work exactly. There's no one size fits all answer, but and because a lot of investors, they only want to work with one servicer. So we have clients or potential clients who aren't going to move loans over to BiFi to be serviced unless BiFi is licensed in all the states that they have
That
loans
they
in.
need.
So
Yep.
if I have loans in Texas and Florida, but BiFi is not licensed in one of those states, oh, I'm sticking with my other servicer because they're licensed in both states. So it made sense that we would want to get that many licenses that quickly, but in hindsight, 100% agree. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes we made,
Yep.
is getting too many licenses too quickly without the revenue to justify those
I was gonna
costs
say
and
the
the
cost
time.
of it.
The time and the actual financial cost of getting those licenses, I think, we shot a little too high in that
We had the
sense.
least amount of knowledge in it, in my opinion. I was never in charge of licensing, so I always had somebody to handle that. And
Yeah,
it turned around and it was like, no, Shante, this is in the front of your face. And I was like, okay. And I remember going, I remember being like, I don't think this is gonna work at some point, but you learn, and that's
yeah,
kind of why we, pump the brakes a little bit.
yeah. And one other quick thing I'll say is, I mean, yeah, Chris and I have started businesses before, but nothing, nothing like this exactly. And we bought office space. We became landlords. The BiFi became a landlord
Yep.
immediately. So all of a sudden, you're up there in New Jersey. HVAC goes out. You don't know what to do.
Nope.
This is not something. You're not a landlord. You're not a
I'm not even a homeowner, so
you're not
these are things I don't
you're not a
have.
homeowner. You're not you hadn't been a business owner at that point. I mean, there's a
Nope.
lot. Forget the servicing side, right? Forget the licensing and the management of people and the processing of payments and all that stuff that takes a ton of work. That all that was brand new to you.
Yep.
The rest of it. So yeah, that's a couple
Definitely
of
some
lessons.
challenges and
Yeah,
lessons that, we can learn from
absolutely.
and move forward better.
Yeah. So okay. Um, 2022 hits, second year, the BiFi is in operation. I think we start taking on more loans. We start taking on clients' loans, start building the portfolio, start getting some revenue. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say most of 2022 actually went fairly well from a business
Pretty
standpoint.
smoothly from a business standpoint. That was also the year that we all got to be in the same place at the same time. I still have those pictures, just as
Great.
proof. We had gone to some conferences and, we were okay.
Yeah.
It was moving not as quickly as like we originally had anticipated and projected, but
Hmm.
it made sense and I wasn't too upset about it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't too much to handle necessarily on the, obtaining new business. That wasn't the issue. And it was fun to go out and represent BiFi to investors and things like that and let them know who we are because we spend a lot more time putting ourselves on the map.
Yeah.
And that's the flip side. You have a brand new servicer that's popping up and
Sure.
competing against all these other servicers that have been around for at least a decade plus.
Yeah.
Some of these servicers again been around for like 40 years. So
Hmm.
I don't, that first and second quarter of 2022, I think
Yeah.
was okay. It kind of got a little crazy in that summertime. For
Yeah.
me at least, personally
Yeah.
for me.
Well,
Um,
and I can say, that I think part of the issue too was you had kind of two people that were, between Chris and me. We weren't necessarily always on the same page, and we don't have to get into the weeds too much, but
it's
I think what
challenging
I
when
would
you have
say
three different
is
ideas.
exactly three strong personalities, and we would get along. It wasn't a matter of us not getting along. It was just we didn't have the same vision necessarily on every little part of the business. So Chris might tell you one thing, I might tell you something else, not
And
even
then I have
knowing
my
we
own
were
opinion.
contradicting. Then you have your own opinion.
Yep.
And so second half of 2022, things didn't quite go as
No.
planned. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think part of us all being together, I started to feel overwhelmed. I started to feel confused. And of course, I still have my son. My mom had gotten sick, but she was the
Mm,
caregiver of my grandmother. So
mm,
my mom getting sick affected my entire family. And I'm like the only one who ever shows up to do certain things.
mm,
So there was just a lot of stress going on personally. And then I come to work and I was like, wait, we're getting different ideas, different wants and goals. And I just felt lost. And I remember all of us talking about, I'm really good at servicing.
yeah,
I don't know how to be a CEO. And that's the God's honest truth. I've never done it. I know I kind of put something together and created it because it was policies, procedures. I knew it was needed.
yeah,
But when you walk through it and a year later you're looking and you're like, wait, there's a lot of things I've never done and didn't understand and would just end up being so overwhelmed. And then that's also managing like staff and being a landlord and dealing with things. So there was
yeah,
a lot of moving parts and my entire emotional state just went down the drain in
yeah.
every capacity of my life. And it's not just, personal. And a lot of it came from Wi-Fi. And it was a
Hmm.
lot of stress. And I know that we all were working together to we all talked about like we need help. Shante needs help. We
Yeah.
got to help her. We just weren't sure where to land on that. And we got to a
Right.
point where we did. And I think I had checked out. And that's it. I was so overwhelmed that I was growing resentment for
Hmm.
something that I created,
Mm,
something that I loved, just six
hmm.
months a year before, and I was excited about. I hated. I was
Yeah.
miserable. And then just the stressor of my mom and my grandma and my son,
Sure.
and I was just like, this is too much. I have to walk away.
Hmm.
And I did it for my sanity, for my peace,
Yeah.
as Shante Duffy, a mother, a daughter, a sister,
Yeah.
a friend, an employee, co-founder of a company, all of it. And I really needed a heavy reset.
Mm,
I lost myself, and then all that was happening was going down this downward spiral of, well, I did all this, and I wasn't paying attention enough to Benjamin, and I was picking myself apart because I needed to,
mm,
but I also had to build myself up. So in September, the end of September
mhm,
2022, I decided to leave. I needed to do that for me, and I think it
mhm.
also was the best thing for my son, my family, and Wi-Fi at the time. I think
Sure.
there was just too much going on, too many just anxieties and stressors, and I had to
Yep.
back out. And I don't think that's what any of us expected.
No.
Um, but it's what to me personally to this day I needed it.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
there's no ill
yeah.
towards it from
No,
my
I mean
end at least.
it was I mean, we started to hit rock bottom as a business at that point. We were starting to get there. We hadn't quite got there. But because when you left, it did.
A lot of
You
things
are such a
changed right
key
before I
player,
left.
and it was already headed south a little bit, but it,
Yep.
it got worse after you left, and that's not to make you feel bad. It's just the reality of. And it's also a compliment because you're such a good servicing person for sure. Um, and just from my perspective too, um, look, Chris started a massive fund. He had a ton going on. He built this, he quit his job, or I don't know when exactly, but he had a lot going on with his Regulation A fund, um,
You quit
which,
your job. You
yeah,
have
I
a
quit my, that's
fund.
true. And that's right. My Achilles and all that stuff. And it was a lot going on. And then, yeah, I like to throw in that I ruptured my Achilles playing the manly sport of badminton. But no, we started to have a lot of struggle at home with my son as well. And it got really really super challenging about a year ago now. But um, and so there's it's not just like if we're talking just BiFi in a vacuum,
It's all of us.
it's but it's like if we could have, I don't think we would have hit that rock bottom. But there's so many other factors: health, relationships, financial things going on in your personal life, right? And so, but when you say taking care of yourself and it was the right thing to do, I 100% agree. Hindsight helps me agree with that. But the whole, on an airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself
Help
first.
yourself before you can help everybody else.
I mean, it's so true. It's corny, cheesy, whatever, but it's really true. You couldn't have helped the people in your own life or BiFi like you are
I already
now.
wasn't, and I felt everybody felt that. And
Yeah.
I will always feel, I don't want to say bad, because I'm not going to feel bad for being me and
Yeah.
genuinely just dealing with life and everything
Yeah.
that's throwing out at me. But there's a part of me that's always, as much as I needed it, there was a part for a while. The first like couple, I was gone for 6 months essentially.
Hmm.
But there was a part of me that felt guilty for
Yeah.
letting everybody, not just you guys like being
Yeah.
co-founders and my staff, it's the clients.
Yeah.
Like I worked so hard to get them through the door. So
Yeah.
there's a part of me that felt like I lost a lot. And then, but I needed to regroup. And that was more, I'm useless to
Yeah.
the entire world if I don't.
Right. Well, and if I'm honest, I was super disappointed, not in you, but disappointed that because I wanted to see you succeed. And I was genuinely disappointed that apparently that wasn't going to happen, at least,
Yep.
with this venture. It was not looking good. So before we get to how all the improvements we've been making with BiFi and the future of BiFi, during that 6 months when you were gone,
Mhm.
how did you approach that kind of internal work? What I mean, be as specific as you'd like,
Yeah.
obviously, but what does that mean? Because people say, "Oh, I had to work on myself." That sounds good. I don't know
No, I had to
what does that
shut
mean?
down. I shut everybody out. I shut my family out. I shut work out. I focused on my son because that's my responsibility. That's the only person I can't shut out ever. And he wouldn't get along far in his life without me. So it took a lot of therapy. I realized that how I was feeling, it was stuck. It was stuck in here.
Mm,
And all that kept is every time something happened, no matter how small of an issue it might have been, it could have been
mhm,
that my son had a hard time tying his shoes and I'm having a mental breakdown over it
mm,
because I'm dealing with so much other stress. So I've been in that therapy since I was 12 years old. I am a true person that's going to push it. And I knew that's what I needed. I was so angry, and that wasn't anger, is a secondary emotion.
yeah, that's right.
I've learned that. So on the outward, everybody's looking at me as angry. And I thought I was angry because what everyone was telling me I was too. Like my family was,
Mm,
Shante, you're so angry. No, I am stressed out. I am overwhelmed. I don't feel adequate enough in certain aspects of my life, which I was bringing into other aspects. So if I'm working really hard at work,
mhm,
well, I'm neglecting my kid. I didn't know how to balance. I had
mhm.
gotten to a point where they're both important. Those are the
Sure.
top two things that were important to me, at
Yeah.
least.
Your
And
first child and your second child.
exactly. And I'm both with bees. Like I didn't know how to juggle it. And I realized that a lot of my feelings and emotions came when I needed to compartmentalize them a little bit. So I needed to deal with my feelings with my family because they were stressed. Like when my mom was sick,
Mm,
I expected my family to step up and help, and they
mhm,
didn't. And that drove me
mm.
nuts because here I am trying to be an entrepreneur, run a business, raise my kid.
Yeah.
And I have to do all this extra. So I had to separate everything and basically dive into each situation, every
Mm.
scenario to really figure out what it is that you're actually feeling. How are you
Mhm.
going to fix that? I had to put in the work to not feel this anger, this
Mhm.
anxiety, this overwhelming, and had to figure out, Shante, moving forward in your life, because life is life. Things are
Yeah.
always going to happen, good or bad. How are you
Yeah.
going to save yourself so that this doesn't happen again in any aspect?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's where I spent a lot of time. And okay, so I figured out what the issues were. Here's how I solved
Mhm.
them. What do I do now
Yeah.
to fix that? And
Sure.
I set boundaries. I'm not good at setting boundaries.
Mm.
And that's something that I've always known.
Yeah, so I know those are important. Boundaries are important, right?
Hmm.
Especially nowadays, if you're talking like working from home and with COVID and all that, everything is all like mixed into one thing if you let it
Yep.
if you let it go that way. So what did you do boundaries wise?
I had to recreate basically my priorities. And obviously, my son is first, no matter what.
Hmm.
And a big part of my overwhelming, like mental space was that I
Mm.
didn't feel like I was giving him the attention he needed
Mm.
as my son. Like,
Yeah,
yes, I'm taking care of him, and but I'm not like most people sit down and spend time with their kids every day. I was over here like,
sure,
yeah, I'm working and just kind of like talking over my computer to him, and that's not a life for him. That's not fair.
sure.
And I definitely didn't want him to be more excited to go spend time with other people other than me. So the first set was Benjamin's always first, and make sure he
Hmm.
is not just taken care of, but
Yeah,
that you are being the mom that he needs you to be, not
sure.
just his responsibilities and necessities.
Yeah, so so
So
not just
I
getting them the quick, you know, fast food burger and moving
no,
and putting them to bed, actually being present. I know you do
yep,
cook him dinner a good
I
bit,
do
and
all the time.
um,
We play a lot of
yeah.
Scrabble. My son's really, and I can't stand Scrabble. I'm just it's not the game for me. He loves Scrabble. He loves puzzles and things that I can't stand. But I love watching his brain move. I
Hmm.
love watching him be happy. So I make it a point, like Shante, there's no reason that you're working till 10 o'clock at night when your kid gets
Hmm.
out of school at 3:30. So the first boundary is to make sure that I did things with him and kept a
Got it.
routine. And as of now, we're still on this routine. I actually like it. And then the second part was I have to, I did still work during that 6 months that I wasn't,
Mm.
I just didn't work
Hmm.
for a
Yeah.
servicing company. I was an asset manager for a fund. And because that was way less challenging, I also realized this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life
Mm.
because I'm used to a little bit more challenging. I
Yeah.
need to keep moving and keep my brain thinking. And it's as
Yeah.
much as yes, borrowers need to be talked to and things like that, it's not my favorite thing to do.
Hmm.
So I knew that wasn't my end all be all, but I also wasn't rushing myself to go anywhere. I wasn't even
Hmm.
100% sure that BiFi was going to be an option for me that I would even take.
Hmm.
I'm not sure, and it just, I mean, it happened. I feel like it was like divine timing, but I was actually
Yeah.
entertaining other
Mm.
opportunities when BiFi came back onto my plate,
Yeah.
and I had to think long and hard on that one.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on, and so yeah, it's we internally said, you know what, we gotta take this shot again to try to get Shantay back because I mean, you're such a key piece to the company. And when things were going well is when you were rocking and rolling. And so if we were going to recover as a company, we knew we had to reach out to you. So, um, man, okay, let's talk from your return through today.
Oof.
So you came back in around March, I guess, of 2023, came
Yep.
back to BiFi. Originally, we had someone kind of doing we had more of a personnel doing operations. So we thought, well, we need more loans. Let's put her in business development.
Well, originally
Um,
started with, "Hey, Shante, just look everything over,"
yeah,
which is why we
sure.
didn't announce that I was back because I just wanted to make sure everything was the way it should be, at least from a servicing standpoint, and
Hmm.
then put me into the business development role because
Hmm.
essentially that's where I shine. That's what I like
Yeah,
to do, and I think everybody knows that, and that's why we were
sure.
like, yeah. Um, and as time went on, we realized very quickly, it didn't take long at all,
Yeah.
that right now, Sean, at least at that time, at this time, this is not where you need to be because we need, expertise in your operations side. And
Yeah.
I 100% agreed with it. I was like, no, no,
Hmm.
like I don't think I should be doing this. I think this is where I need to be for now.
Yeah.
And we kind of switched that role and made sure that I kind of oversaw and still oversee all the operations of BiFi as a whole. So my hands are
Hmm.
a little bit in everything,
Yeah.
just to make sure that everything is still functioning
Sure.
and making sure the processes that were originally put in place, either they're there and still working, or if they're not, tweak it, change it, help any, anywhere that's needed.
Yeah.
Um, which is kind of where I thought, okay, let's turn this ship around first and let's
Hmm.
keep it moving. And then we can rearrange and replay as
Yeah.
time goes.
Well, the reality is too, not only did you have the long history of servicing experience, default servicing with like foreclosures and bankruptcy and all the servicing experience you had, you also had intimate knowledge of how this company had been formed, the intent of what was put in place, what was supposed to
Hmm.
happen, also familiarity with the loans themselves, a lot of them. So we probably couldn't have found anybody else who we could plug and play like we were able to with you. And then so yeah, quickly roped back into operations. The comment you made about having your hands in many things. Part of that is just we're a small team. We're a
Well, yeah,
startup.
it's not a
And
negative. It's more of just to make sure everything is moving the way that we intended it to
yeah,
originally move. And if we need to change, change, and fill in the
absolutely.
holes. I think there were just some holes, and it was okay,
Yeah,
Shantay, you of all people know where these holes need to get filled. So just take a look. And so it's not a negative. I love
yeah,
doing what I do. That's why I'm here. So it definitely was that. And we've had some personnel changes.
yeah,
We've had a lot.
hmm,
I guess over the course of BiFi's existence,
yeah,
myself included, which I never thought I'd be on that list. But it's really just, again, I knew why we originally wanted to start this. So
yeah,
it was plug and play, and I fill in anywhere I can.
absolutely. So no, I mean, with the turnover and things, look, hiring is it's a difficult thing in a small business or any
Not our
business. It's
favorite.
it's and your people are critical, like your team members are everything. So if you pick the wrong person or it just doesn't work out, it can really end up hurting you. So we've that's another area I think we've come a long way with as
We
far as
have.
lessons learned in hiring the right people and also getting them in the right seats on the bus. Um, so talk to us about the last 6 months specifically with BiFi. What improvements have been made and what's looking good?
So we have cleaned up a lot of missing information, a lot of missing data, answered a lot of questions. Lenders, they were lacking a lot of communication. So that was the biggest thing about BiFi, like why we
Hmm.
want to be different.
Yeah.
Nobody communicates. And with, the kind of downfall of everything, communication stopped too. So it was trying to get everybody back up to speed and get these lenders the customer service that they deserve. So that was a big push. We recently just went back to our weekly summaries, so that it hopefully eliminates some like questions that lenders, would are
Hmm.
naturally asking right now because they're not getting that communication.
Hmm.
We definitely had personnel change. So we have a lovely new CEO, Mr. Bateman, um, which I think made a really big change in the past couple of months. I think that was needed to have you, a
Hmm.
founder, in the driver's seat. We definitely, cleaned up with staff and kind of rearranged and made sure that we got the right people in the right
Yeah.
seats on the right bus. We are fortunate
Yeah.
enough to get another employee to come back
Yeah.
and join us. So I was very, 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 and will forever be grateful for that, because I don't know how far we would have gotten without her either. I don't want
Yeah.
to take all the credit for, helping this either, because it's not just me, it's everybody. And then we definitely leaned on some resources that, we weren't always aware were available to us to help us grow and be better and get back on the track of success and being the servicing company that we want to be. And I think that we would not be having this conversation today
Hmm.
if we didn't have the resources that we do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been not only team member turnover, but we have had some changes on the ownership side as well. And
Yes.
um, as of today, we can't get into too many specifics with regard to the ownership but suffice it to say that in December things really took a turn for the better with BiFi and our, like you said, our resources, the financial resources that we have backing the company, and just looking back from a founder's standpoint, I think one of the mistakes Chris and I made was t- at times being too passive. We thought, oh, we can invest. We're investors. We invest some money in this, in this company, and then it just grows and we 10x our money, and that, oh, sounds great.
Nope.
Well, that's great if if it's a functioning operation that we're buying, like buying an existing company. But when it's a startup, like, so many challenges. So yes, I did personally. I got a business coach. He's been on the podcast as well, Chris Steer. Um, One of the first things he did for me was say we restructured my own weekly calendar together, and BiFi became the focus. This was before I formally came in as CEO. And so I started to make BiFi every morning. That's what I'm focused on. And so, not trying to make the episode about me, but you are right. I've made a very big concerted effort just individually to be much more actively involved in overseeing the company, and getting you what you need,
Yep.
because you are the servicing expert, and your team members are obviously experts at certain parts of the servicing as well. But I've personally gotten much more involved, and I feel like we've really made a ton of progress in the last 6 months specifically. Um, and I'm really excited about the future.
I am
Um,
so
I
excited about the future.
Yeah,
Watching how
so
things have moved. I know that we definitely had some worrying concern, and I'm not
mhm,
gonna lie about it. There was a genuine fear at
yeah,
one point as to where is this going, what are we doing? And we always talk about the light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah,
And more recently that this light is not far.
mhm,
And I, as of like the past, like realistically, past like 2, 3 weeks, I think I've actually realized, Shantay, this is happening. Like this is working. Like these are positives. I think we've been so used to being on edge that
yes,
for now it's like, wait, so we're changing so many things to be successful, to be the servicing company that we wanted to always be, and to do the things that we want to do correctly. And
yeah,
so for me, it's exciting because I don't know if we had this conversation a year ago, if we, if
mm,
we would be
oh
saying
no,
the same thing. And none of us saw this coming. But I'm along for the ride and I'm here to stay. There will
yeah,
not be any more Shante mental states. Again, the boundaries help with that. So
yeah,
that's been working for me at least for the better part of, a year.
absolutely. I think taking the long-term view is critical, because we can all grind, we can all have stressful, like difficult weeks and work 60, 70 hours. That's fine for a period of time.
Yep.
It doesn't work in the long
Long
term.
term.
And it doesn't do anything for you as a mother, or
Nope.
the other parts of your life. So um couldn't agree more. I don't know. I mean, honestly, a few months ago, I think people were looking from the outside in, thinking, there's a fine line between um, sort of stick to itiveness and just stupidity or stubbornness. And
Yep.
I know I knew that we had never really done a full marketing campaign. There were so many things we hadn't actually done. So I felt like we still had a chance. And
We just needed some
man,
time.
we just need some time and the right relationships, and some things connected through some relationships, and we've got, like you said, a lot more resources now, just financially, also uh, system wise, that we're able to plug into, as well as just expertise on
Yep.
servicing that, other parts of servicing that we're not experts in, right? So it just being able to have that backstop has been phenomenal, for, like you said, for me to be able to take a breath and
Yep.
say, okay, if we're going to do this long term, which I am excited to say that I truly believe we're going to be a big success long term, you've got to be able to take a step back, take a breath, take a break, take a day off. um, so before I get to my rapid fire questions, before we
Hmm.
close up, what's one or two lessons you or takeaways for a single mom out there who wants to start a business? What
Do it.
goes through? Do
The
it.
first thing I'm always, and I say this to my friends now, some of them are single parents as well. They're having newborns, so I'm definitely a decade plus ahead of them. But do it. Take the leap because it's worth it. I think as a human being, as a woman, as a mother, I've grown so much. I've grown so much in the past 3 years than I have in the past 10. And that I like who I am today. I love who I am today. And I'm realizing that I once you get, just stay organized. That's the hard, I think that's really where I kind of just went down the drain, is trying to juggle and staying organized. Yes, there are going to be times where you have long nights. Yes, your kids
Hmm.
get sick. Like, it happens. I had a
Yeah.
huge incident with my son earlier this year, and
Mm.
we're still battling through it.
Hmm.
Things happen, but don't let it run you and don't let it stop you. 'Cause at the end of the day, I just look at this, hey, Shantay, you're working to create something successful. You want your kids to look up to you and be proud. My
Sure.
son knows, oh,
That's
mom,
true.
yep, you're working behind your computer. You're working,
Yeah.
like, he knows. And it makes me feel good when I hear him talking to other people, like, oh, well, my mommy works behind it. Like, he doesn't know what I do. But he knows I work
Hmm.
behind a computer, and then I talk to people, and he thinks that I'm just helping people, which essentially I am. That's how I explain,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just helping.
Sure.
it it's something like in your core that it
Mm.
it ignites that you don't even know that you have.
Mm.
So don't stop. It's hard.
Hmm.
I will put this on everything. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life,
Mm.
raising a child as well as starting a business at the same time simultaneously and maintaining that. But it's not as bad. You have to go through hurdles. That's life. You have to go
Mm.
through these speed bumps
Yeah.
and things like that. But don't
For sure.
give up and don't pass opportunities. Even, I mean, my story, I had an opportunity, got to a point, I was like, I can't do this. I left.
Hmm.
The opportunity came back. It's like, no, no,
Mm.
Shante, like, you're still supposed to be here at this point. And there's reasons and seasons. I go by everything.
Mm.
The world
Love that.
works in a weird, mysterious way.
Hmm.
Everything happens for a reason. And
Hmm.
I was supposed to go through that. I was.
Yeah.
And that was my path. And I'm still on my
Hmm.
path. That doesn't end until I'm not here.
Hmm.
But just go with it. Trust your gut, trust yourself, and just remember there's always a bigger picture. It's to get to a
Yeah.
point where you can, some people it's financial security, some people it's to leave stuff to their children. Whatever it is, don't
Hmm.
shy away from that.
That's really good. Well, I can say it's not only your son who's proud of you. My daughter is also very proud of you.
I'm telling you, I'm
So
gonna have to make a trip down there and actually meet
she
her.
she doesn't I don't think she ever listens to my podcast, but I'm sure she'll
Now
listen to this
she
one.
will. She
Yeah,
listened to
I'm
last
sure.
one.
All right, so you ready for some rapid fire
Oof,
questions?
yes, I guess.
If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
You're stronger than you think.
Love that. Really good. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
I'm buying a house first for me and my kid. I'd invest in notes. This is what I love, as
Mhm.
well as I'd get back. I want to do more for like autism research and things like that. I want to
Mhm.
understand things better. I'm really intrigued by the human mind and how it works. So I would give back. I would invest to keep the investments rolling. I would never give up my job. I don't care if I won the lottery or anything. I would stay. I'm not that person. I like working. So.
Mhm. Love it. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be?
Oprah Winfrey.
I think you said that last time.
I definitely did, and I'm going to stand on that until the day it actually happens. That's a goal
It's
I've
not
set for
a
myself.
not a bad choice. Um, yeah, I just heard a podcast. I may have sent it to you actually. The happiness.
Hmm.
It was with the Diary of a CEO. He had a happiness expert on, and Oprah had actually reached out to this guy because he had a regular column that he wrote, and Oprah called him up and said, "We need to do a book together." So maybe one day she'll call you up to do a
I'm
book
just going to
together.
call her. I'm going to have to find her,
There
knock
you
on her
go.
front door.
Um, what is a challenge that you're facing in your business right now?
Time management. That's the God's honest truth. I know where we're going, and so it's all up in my brain, and
Yeah.
it's exciting, and the wheels are moving, but it's like, Shante, things take time, and having to accept that things take time. I'm not a patient person naturally.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot about myself. I just took this assessment, which I read through,
Hmm.
and whew, it's exciting, but it's true and scary at the same time. But it leads me to improve. And I'm young.
Yeah.
I have so much life to live and so much more in my career that I haven't seen yet. So I need to really work on my time management a little bit better. But I think that we're already kind of working on that. And I'm kind of, getting used to delegating a little bit more and passing stuff off. And it's the
Yeah.
boundary setting. So
Sure. How about a book or two that you could recommend?
I don't really read too often. I'm not gonna lie. I'm more of
Okay.
like I'll read an
We can skip
article.
that one. Or
I'm not a
podcast
huge
or.
The podcast that you actually shared with me, I am drawing the biggest blank on the name, but I
Layla
listened to it.
Hormozy.
Yes, I love her.
Forget the
Like I
name
would
of
love
her
to meet her
podcast.
and somehow
Yeah.
talk to her in person.
Yeah.
I was intrigued. I'm still intrigued. I'm still listening. I listen to podcasts more than anything. Not always business related though. Sometimes I just need like sound
Murder.
playing. Yep. So I'm a true crime junkie as well. So
Um, this has been awesome. I mean, a few quick takeaways. I think boundaries, that's been critical in our discussion today, and obviously in the work you did on yourself. Um, just setting boundaries, prioritizing, taking the long-term view, realizing that there's a bigger picture, right?
mhm,
It's not just when you're going through a really hard time, it's easy to get super caught up in just that and that stress. And it's a big deal, of course, right? But it will pass. And
it
there's a,
does pass. Even though you feel
yeah.
like it doesn't, it does. I mean, how many times do I tell you I can't do this, I'm not doing this, and the next day I'm like, today's a great day.
Yeah.
It
And I'm like,
happens.
I'm just not going to talk. I'll give her a
I'll
little
let her
break.
be.
She'll be
Yep.
back.
Yep. That's how it is.
I think we all get like that on some level, but awesome, Shante. This has been great. For our listeners out there, how can they find you? Where can they reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, Shantay Duffy. That's my name. You can also email me at sduffy@bifils.com. Or if that's easier, um, I won't leave the phone number. It's
Yeah.
online. You could visit the website bifils.com and it has our contact information and email addresses there as well.
BiFils.com. Any private lenders, note investors, hard money lenders, any mortgage holders
Commercial, construction.
commercial.
We
Yep.
started taking those in recently. So
Absolutely. So don't hesitate to reach out. Shante, this has been great. Thank you so much. I know you said you're
thank
struggling
you
with
for
you're
having me.
you're improving with time management. So we do know that your time is very valuable. So we appreciate you taking an hour out to talk with us today. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Anytime.
And to the listener out there, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.